Okay, looks like most of you are done. Now let's just take a sample. What are some of the challenges for the 21st century Christian? Let's start from here. Right, go ahead. It's too expensive to start a family. Okay, okay. So cost of living issues, right? Okay. How about here?
We said information overload.
Information overload. Tell us more. What do you mean by that?
Like getting social media feeds and a lot of ideas that are being planted in your feeds.
And how do you feel when that happens?
Also, you need to know which voice to listen to.
Okay, discerning the voices. Okay, okay. How about over here? That group looks quite exciting.
Too much distractions.
Too much distraction. Okay. And what happens when that?
It's harder and harder to prioritize.
Okay. How?
Especially also the younger generation.
Okay. Tell us more. What do you mean by younger generation? You harder to prioritize them, or harder for them to prioritize, or?
As in a lot of leisures. I mean, they are younger. Many options of leisures, including of course the amount of time that they spend on net. Social media.
Okay.
And of course, a lot, as they grow older, there's a lot of traveling, there's family, so there's a lot of distractions.
Okay, so the possibilities are so much, and how do you steward them? Because you're bombarded with information, with choices, priorities, how do you discern, right? How about folks further down? Oh, so many people, only one idea. Any more or not? Any more or not?
Oh, well, we mentioned like the idea of like postmodernism, pluralism, and how there's a cancel culture. So
Okay.
it's very hard to speak your own voice without people trying to cancel you.
Okay, so there's more antagonism. People are at loggerheads. It's either you or me. There's no room for negotiation. No moderates lah. No, there's double bell curve. In between is empty.
Yeah.
Okay, how about here? Okay.
Everyone out there is claiming to be correct, claiming to be the source of truth. So there's no objectivity.
Okay. So the world is hitting you left, right, center, 24/7 with all sorts of information, needs, requirements. You describe whether it's a scam or whether it's correct. And if this one is correct, what does it got to do with me? Even got something to do with me. How should I prioritize it? No, when I prioritize it, I run out of time already. So what should I super prioritize and so on? Okay. Any more on the last or your? Yes, go ahead.
Spiritual deception.
Okay, spiritual deception. Tell us more.
There are too many groups of modern day groups worship that are preaching the wrong stuff, which are very keen, likely to the real gospel, and many Christians will be joining the group unaware of it.
Okay. So how do you discern whether when someone is preaching, they are really preaching their culture or their biasness, or whether they're really preaching the word of God and so on? Okay. How about the folks at the back, the sisters? Oh, share already, huh? Oh, same idea. Okay. Well, information overload, prioritization, and so on, all those are very valid points. On top of that, you may want to talk about type of information, all these AI things that's happening, ChatGPT, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges. Climate change is a very important part. In 2050, if you don't do anything, Gardens by the Bay will be a pond by the bay because it will be flooded over, right? These few months we have experienced the hottest few months ever. It's going to get worse, and a lot of people think that we are switching to EV, electric vehicles. That's going to save the world, but actually behind EV there's lithium mining. There's a lot of child abusers. People call it red lithium because a lot of people are working in very harsh conditions to provide the lithium, the cobalt for you to build your EVs. So human beings are like that, right? We want to solve one problem and create another problem. Then we ignore the other problem until the next generation say, how come it's so like that? Then try to solve this problem and then create another problem, right? So these are some of the complexities we have to deal with. Things are not linear. Things are in a network situation. And now my question for you next, I just realized me tapping the PowerPoint here doesn't mean that this has moved. Okay, how prepared are churches to guide Christians through these 21st century concerns? Where are we right now in your assessment? Your church, my church, information prioritization, postmodernity, deception, and so on. Okay, maybe you turn around, see whether you can fix your own problem. 2 minutes. This time take 2 minutes. Turn to each other. How prepared are we? How have our preaching and our teaching contributed to helping you with some of these issues that you mentioned? Okay, go ahead, turn around. It's your turn now. Yeah, turn around, talk to each other. Okay. Now let's hear from the folks at the back first. We can start from the AV team. Okay, AV team. How prepared? How has your church been preparing you to deal with these concerns? Church in general, your church also lah. No, it's okay one. Not very prepared, huh? Okay. How about this side? This side, the one in the basketball jersey, right? Sorry, your yellowness stand out. Not prepared to deal with postmodernity, polarity, work culture, and so on. Okay.
Not prepared. Because I think we were just discussing that application is always the hardest.
Yes.
And so the applying of our faith is difficult. Like, how do we apply the things we learn in the Bible to all these 21st century concerns?
Okay. It's not.
And then one more thing we said was that it's easier for us to look at the type speed amongst each other. But it's a different story once you try to engage publicly outside of the world because of the cancel culture and the postmodernism and everything like that.
Okay. Good point. How about here? How do you think the church has been preparing you to dealing with your wicked problem, so to speak?
Yeah, it's not too late, okay, although it's very late right now. Master working will be preaching next month
Yes.
on creation care.
There you go.
Yeah, and I think it's trying to get members to be aware and to be better stewards of the environment that we have amongst us, which actually God has ordained us for the living that we're supposed to have better stewards.
Yes.
Look after His creation.
Yeah.
So I think we will talk more about it once more.
Yes, and that's very important because and there's also how should the church respond, right? Should we just stop using straws? Is it good enough? Or should we be doing more than that? A few days ago, I just had a cup of coffee with this person who is the head of sustainability, and when she started off looking at ESG, like environment, social, and governance, nobody cared about ESG. But now, even charities like us, Kana ESG, that is in our government's checklist now. What ESG tasks have you been doing? And the point is that it's becoming important. And if businesses don't devolve to be sustainable business, the world is really going to be flooded. But then, as a church, what should we do? Imagine if when John Newton saw all the bad stuff he had been doing as a slave trader, and then he challenged Wilberforce, you should do something about it to abolish slavery. What would present-day John Newton do to people like you? Is the challenge use less straws, or is the challenge do something else? I think that's the key thing, right? Okay, so a lot of challenges, including tripping over. Now, one other challenges I've looked at, because it just came out in the report, is basically the state of the church, right? Now, I just want to frame it that discipleship into the 21st century, things still don't change. We are still called to love our God and neighbor. Why do we care about sustainability? Because we are hanging out with a whole bunch of neighbors, and the worst thing is the global north use up all the fossil fuels, destroy the earth, but the flooding is happening in the islands who have not benefited from any of that, right? That's not loving your neighbor. Okay, so regardless whether you believe that climate change is really correct or not, taking care of our neighbors are important. And so there are many challenges. Besides postmodernity, besides information gluts and prioritization, I name a few more. There's silver tsunami coming up. By 2050, I will also contribute to that. 1 in 3 of us will be over 65 years old. Okay, I will not ask for hands to come up. It's quite sensitive. 1 in 3, So if 1 in 3 is under 65, the other 1/3 are still children. Only 1/3 of the nation will support the other 2/3. That's quite serious, right? Is it not? One income got to split 3 ways. I think you're still quite young, You're supporting all of us here, Then there's the so old, yeah. Okay, there's the complexities of applying our faith in our cultures, in our workplaces, right? How relevant can we be? It's become very complex. If you are doing AI technologies, what are the OB markers that you should do? So, for example, some of you may have heard recently that there is an app called Replica. How many of you have heard of Replica? Oh, she's called it. Interesting news, right? This man, very lonely, talk to Replica, chat AI girlfriend. Kill the queen. She say, oh, this is a nice thing to do. The chat is there to affirm you, not like real wife will tell you off. It's a stupid thing, Assure, until he want to climb Buckingham Palace and want to kill the queen, So now the court case has come out, and the Replica chat trail is now evidence against him, right? That's probably not the right way to develop AI, So what are the OB markers for developing AI? When you go into some banks, MNCs, there's diversity, equality, and inclusion now, and they're not thinking about what Wen Bin is thinking, special needs people. They're thinking of just how to affirm the LGBTQ plus community. That's all. That's a very narrow understanding of diversity, but that's what a lot of people have to deal with. So how do you deal with that? And then there's also the case of how do you then, when you disciple your leadership, people well, how do you then lead them forward as church leaders, as pastors, right? You can be all very highly effective disciples, 100 of you, but all running 100 different directions also cannot, has God called you as a community. So leadership skills also become very important. But what's also very important now, and some churches are experiencing, is that many young adults are leaving churches. Many young adults are looking at our faith and say, no, what does that got to do with my life? Give me purpose and so on. So, and how is the living like? If you look at these statistics, the living is basically, many of them are to other churches, so it is church transfer, okay? And if you look at these statistics, right, it seems to be 58% of people who went to another church came from another church, right? But if you fine-tune the statistics, actually not only 58%, but 78% of people who move from one church to another church are previously churched. So basically, churches are growing, not because we are evangelizing, no, because some sheep just walk over to our pen, that's all, no. That's not a very good sign, okay? But it means that, but there are also an outflow of people who never come back. They never come back. They well, in the West, they call them nuns, not N-U-N-S, but N-O-N-E-S. They have no faith. And the nuns will continue to increase, right? So, and as you interview young adults, okay, this is one trend only, the state of the church is they are dissatisfied with preaching ministry. They lack in-person community or relationships during the pandemic. They complain about church culture. There's evolution, acceleration of staff, church-wide issues. There are a lot of issues that young adults struggle with that were push factors for them. Okay, so I highlight all this because it's not something that we can tackle alone as a church, but we need to tackle it alone among churches to see how we can support each other. And of course, EFC as a denomination actually have some of those mechanisms. So this brings us to what BGST wants to look at going forward. Okay, going forward, many of my fellow colleagues are also working in ministry in churches, right? So we open up the hood of the car, we look underneath it, and we see, okay, it's actually quite complex. And we see that there's a lot of needs. There's a great need for pastoral care, for mentoring, for leading. But then there are inadequate resources, right? There's not enough time, manpower, teaching skills to come up with training that will help people. For example, I worked with my pastor and we came up with this nice PowerPoint slide on all the courses we should teach people. Then he looked at me, then I look at him, I'm not going to implement this. It's a lot of hard work, getting the instructors, designing the curriculum, and making sure they all fit together, because you don't have a good disciple training with just one course, right? You have a network of courses. There's a lot of pain, I empathize with my church, and I suspect as I talk around, many churches feel the same. So the question to be asked is that if we believe that the church is the agent of God's transformation, and we want to train marketplace disciples and leaders, then we should work with the church and help empower them in all these areas. So basically, we want to partner with churches so that you do well in what you do well, and we come in those challenging areas and to support you. Now, some of you may have seen this model. Many of you are familiar with the 70-20-10 model. It's created by the Center of Creative Leadership, basically saying that in all adult training, particularly in those that have soft skills involved, 70% of training involves OJT, right? You work and learn somebody to train you. But 20% is the mentoring, is the guidance. 10% is the formal training. You just go for a class, come to BGST, that kind of stuff. Which means that if you spend all your time and money in 10%, you're not going to get your return on investments, right? It's simply not effective. Because you learn a theory, you got to practice until it becomes part of you. So the 70-20 is actually far more important. And I believe this has always been the area that pastors, church leaders has focused on, because there's priority. You're getting things right. But what do you do with the 10%? The 10%, if you think about it, those of us who are teachers, very easy. To teach 1 hour, you need to spend 10 hours of research and development. So you teach 10 hours of curriculum, you need to spend 100 hours. But you only have 40 hours a week of work week, even if you're a pastor? Where do you want to devote your 40 hours? Is it in the 70-20 or is it in the 10? So where BGST comes from, therefore, is can we work with churches to help them to develop content resources so that you have access to a wide range of resources. Many of it will be digital to help you with your scriptural and theology, so that you don't have to hunt around YouTube and try to fix things, build a curriculum yourself, build a Bible project here, a bit of this. We curate and give you the map. And when there's holes, nobody is talking about this. We like to have content that talk about marketplace integration. How do you apply grace at work? How do you apply grace when you're doing performance appraisal, right? No, this seems to be, doesn't match one. Performance appraisal and grace doesn't match. What does grace got to do with work plan? Anybody knows or not? Well, you all know what's a work plan, right? How many of you know what's a work plan? What does grace got to do with work plan? Sorry? Flexi one? No, not that. Now, in many organizations, people don't flourish, people are frustrated when there's no clarity in what they are supposed to do. When the bosses don't set that clarity and the boundaries, using things like work plan, people get very frustrated, they leave, they burn out. And then the super responsible one, when they see a ball drop, they'll go and catch, right? Then the not so responsible one will just sit back and relax. You want to catch everything, then catch until you burn out. It happens outside, it happens in churches. So to me, a work plan is a means of grace, where you then help people see what they should do, what they should not do, what they should prioritize, what should hands off, stop doing this because you're burning yourself out. So mechanisms, frameworks and practices are what I think going forward BGST want to help churches to think about. Teaching a theology grace is important, but how do you execute it when the rubber hits the road? I think those are the important things we want to establish. So when we talk about leadership, it's the same thing. When we talk about spiritual formation, it's the same thing also. It is important to say that we need to trust God. Okay, preach 30 sermons and trust God. You can know that you need to trust God here, but if you don't trust God here, it's good to be useless. So how do you help people experience the love of Christ so that God is so intimately present, you know that I can trust Him. You make an emotional switch from your cognitive learning into your experiential learning, right? If you can trust God experientially, it's easier to really trust Him. Okay, so these are the things that we're trying to look at. How do we develop the resources for churches so that they can focus on the mentoring and pastoring, and then the 10%, we work on that. Okay, so this involves I just realized I was looking at this slide and the slide's not moving, and you're suffering in silence. Okay, so scripture, theology, marketplace integration, cultural engagement, these are some of things that we deal with. How do you help people to prioritize information? How do you deal with work cancel culture? If you are cancelled, how do you live with yourself, come to terms with yourself? What do you do with leadership? How do you do with governance? How do you look at spiritual formation and so on? These are things that we really want to work with you. And then what do? We will develop multiple learning pathways, small courses that people can learn, so that the Bible study, the small group leaders, when I was a young adult, which is quite some time ago, Bible study, small group leaders equals to Bible study leaders. You know how to interpret Bible, you can lead. But now we know that's not true lah. No, Bible study leaders, sometimes administration very poor, right? Cannot rally everybody together, right? Last minute, hey, anybody coming or not? No, you ask these kind of questions. Or pastoral care, this person say that, my wife and I just quarreled. Then you look at him, okay, let's continue our Bible study, because you don't know what to do. So we need to train them in pastoral, some degree of pastoral care skills. Then some degree of facilitation skills, or else the Bible study leader will end up talking to himself all the time. Now, we all know that these skills are necessary, but it's very tough to organize and get all this training for you. And you can do it for 1 year, but can you do it for the next 3 to 5 years? There's some degree of digitization and scalability that's needed. And so that when you get a resource that people can switch on and therefore they can use, create a pathway that can choose course A, course B, course C, that you can just choose and learn anytime, anywhere in small groups on your own. I think that's the necessary part. And then there's an aspect of adult learning that's important. You don't just learn cognitively, you learn by engaging the situation that you have, you learn by applications. And so a lot of learning going forward, when we want to scale up, we're basically going to build a media team to help you to develop content that will help you apply your faith. Not just know it here in the theology, but what are the frameworks for executing it, what are the practices for cultivating yourself so that you can really bless the people around you. Okay? So moving on, what does that mean so far? So BGST, as you have known, have always been a postgraduate school. So we are like Lego, you stack, and you reach the MDiv. Right? So if you don't know what that means, ask Stephen. You start off from graduate cert, you think you are confident, you stack grad dip, you think you're confident, you stack more. And we have always focused on how do we do integrative learning. When it comes to theology class, we make sure that you have some spirituality involved. We want to push towards what does it mean to bring your faith to work and so on. So we have always focused on that. And so to give you an example, therefore, if you come for a New Testament class, we want to help you to not only know the history and the theology of the Gospels, but starting from last year, we're beginning to say, how can we push you so that you learn how to use the Gospels and pray? We want to push you to then say, when you study the parable of the Good Samaritan, what does that mean for our neighbor in modern Singapore? There are still poor people around, quite invisible, because government is very good at putting them into rental flats, but they are still challenged. How do you deal with that? This morning, my wife was just woke up 7 o'clock. I heard her talking to someone because one of her beneficiaries borrowed from loan sharks. Loan shark came to the door. They were all very stressed. The police came and so on. How do you, what does a theological class got to do with this? This is rubber hits the road kind of situation, right? You cannot just throw theology at the person. Something else needs to be done, okay? And so we want to remind everyone when they are learning, don't just stay in theology. Look at its implementation. That's very important. So going forward, therefore, what we are looking at is, can we partner with churches to develop ground out what are your needs, what are your pain points, to design usually small classes, digitized classes that people can easily use to develop themselves. So a platform of 70 to 100 small courses over the next 5 years. We also want to start off a center of leadership and a center for spiritual formation. Now, what does that mean? I've already hinted at this. Discipleship is a lifelong process. Starts in catechism, but in many churches, after catechism, we struggle already, because people develop in different areas. And then, as I mentioned, the priority is really in the mentoring, in the pastoral care, because when someone is struggling with whether I'm going to lose my job, he doesn't need another Bible study, right? He wants to know how is God going to guide him through that. Some scripture may come in, but he really doesn't need to do another Bible study on Romans 1. That's the reality of it. When he has recovered, yes, you can do the Bible study, but this is the dynamics we are working with. Okay, so what we want to do, as I said, is to empower churches. The content is there for you to use. Focus on mentoring. When you use it, you use it. Okay, you don't have to worry about developing. Because in most cases, when I was leading Bible study last time before BGST, the night before you struggle like mad, right? Trying to read. Then you prepare. Then people ask you questions. You're not very sure. So everybody have an opinion. In the end, you don't know whose opinion is correct. You project that for the next 10 years, you're not going to grow much. You must well come to take one course on Bible interpretation with BGST. That's the reality. I've been there, done that, misled a lot of people, right? So what we want to do is to try to help you to fix that by creating content that you can actually use, you can trust, and then the discussion is more fruitful. Okay, that's where we are working towards. Let me see. So curriculum that's multi-tiered so that you progress along the way. Worship leader move this way, small group leaders move this way. Micro modules you can curate so that you then wonder, this Bible project, YouTube, where can I slot that in? We'll teach you how to slot that in. How to connect with people, how to communicate. I think that's important. A lot of times we cannot teach properly because we cannot communicate properly. It's a different skill set, right? Just like you're an engineer or a teacher, you become head of department, you think it's the same thing. Actually, you can crash and burn as head of department because it's people management skills, right? Let's move on. So, which brings us, therefore, if I have discipled our people, how do I mobilize them? So, because the church is the agent of transformation in the world, how do you mobilize them so that the 100 people are not marching in 100 directions, but marching in one direction? So that's when you heard me talking about this framework. We have theology, but we also need processes and practices to help people to move forward. So, for example, the theology is every Christian has spiritual gifts and talents, right? We all have, right? Okay. So, and the process, therefore, I need to use these talents by working in teams because one arm needs a hand, it needs a leg, and so on. And then we need to delegate. We need frameworks for that. But as you talk to anyone, even in secular organizations, right, the problem of delegation is that if you don't practice it well, the delegation fails, right? Then after 6 months, you sit down with your reportee, and then how come not done yet? Because I don't know what to do. So what are the practices to help the people? So leadership in church and leadership in secular organizations, there's major overlap. But how do we help you and empower you that you can have the sense to do that? So, so our focus is to not only provide theology, but the processes and frameworks to help you to flourish. So what we're looking at is that over the last 3 years, we have prototyped a pastoral leadership training program. We want to scale that so that marketplace leaders, executives, can learn how to lead themselves well and also to lead other people well, to influence them well. The vision is very simple. You know, people in the marketplace, you go out in your offices, you lead well, you can... Imagine attending a meeting, very chaotic, all over the place, agenda is not followed, and everybody, Singaporeans, everybody keep quiet. Can you drive and lead that meeting forward so that people walk out and say, I didn't waste my 2 hours, right? How do you do that? That's leadership. Even though you are on the packing line, asking the right question can drive things forward. So we want to train you to do that so that people then ask you, hey, where do you learn all these skills? The wonderful thing is that I learned it from church. Now we can't do that yet, right? Now I say I learned it from some skill future course or something like that. Isn't it wonderful that if you can do that and say, I learned it from church, right? This is the second area we want to focus on. Some of the initial training will be digitized, okay? But leadership is a practice. You will need to engage with fellow human beings. And so we plan to launch a new foundational leadership training program where we will work with not just theologians who are doing our own, because we're not very good in that. Work with Christians who are experienced executive trainers. Work with them so that we get the best practices over and merge it into a product that you cannot get in either places. Okay, so that's why we also focus on courses on coaching, on facilitation, on building teams, and so on. Because in the mentoring process, a lot of times it's, hey, Pastor or Elder, I watched this video on YouTube, what do you think? Then I watched 3 videos, I get very confused really, what do you think? So content is not king anymore. You can get content anywhere, but processing the content, guiding people to work through the content and applying the content, that is the next frontier. Okay, so moving on then, we have a sense of discipleship. We nurture people to how to integrate faith and life. We want to lead them forward. But undergirding that, PGS's conviction is still our relationship with Christ. We can lead out of all sorts of nonsense, insecurities, pride, and so on. But we really want Christians to lead out of the conviction that God really loves you. He has called you, and you can be there to lead courageously and sacrificially. You know, the best leader, I believe, is someone who I'm going to do this because it's right. I don't care if I lose my job. When you have the courage to do that, you can make the right decisions. People who are always protecting their jobs will never be able to lead very well because you're losing focus. Now, that's a very simple concept. To be able to do that, it requires a spiritual courage to really be convinced that Christ loves you. He is with you on this. If the bottom falls on you, He's going to catch you. Now, that kind of experience requires a deep spiritual formation. And so, what we want to do, therefore, discipleship, leadership, is to create a center of spiritual formation to provide the space where if you want to come for retreats, we can do that. You want to speak to a spiritual mentor, we have 6 of them now, trying to grow more, you can have access to them. If you want to grow and deepen your spiritual formation through practice and exercises, you can do that. I think Stephen and Ing Chao have gone through that. Stephen got right? And they can share with you what that means. And also to then, therefore, to take it forward and to develop mentoring skills of your own so that when you sit down with someone, it's not a coaching exercise. You have a sense that Christ is with us. How do I discern with you what God is doing with you? What is the good and the better thing? Okay? There are a lot of good things in life. What is the better thing for you to do? Now, that is not something you can read out of a book, but that's a skill that you have to develop. So we also want to develop our dream about 100 people in the next 5 years now in that. So we therefore have an ecosystem that postgraduate studies will continue, but what we really want to develop is a center for church partnerships and Christian education, a center for Christian leadership, and a center for spiritual formation. Okay? I'm going to just help you to just engage this, the conceptualization that we have. I'm going to give you some exercises. Okay, one last exercise, not very stressed one. This is the last paper already. Now, so you hear that 70% is related to what you say. Right? 70% of US news consumers are concerned about fake news, right? Disinformation. Digital disinformation is destroying society, but we can fight back. Now, I want you to turn each other and say, what does the gospel got to do with this? How should Christians respond to that? No, just try to do some brainstorming. I give you 5 minutes. Cannot. Now, turn to each other. Okay? And remember what I said? You can talk a bit about theology, but what's the process? What are the practices? Huh? Go back, huh? Go back. Okay. Practices. Okay, are you done? Let's hear from here. Okay, okay, the first shall has the easiest question now. Theology, what biblical teachings will you bring to this, the question of this information? What biblical teachings? Just churn up. What do you think?
Gospel is the truth. You have to comply with the truth. Whatever they speak, you have to be faithful.
Okay, we stand for truth because God is true and God is just. So truth has to do with justice, right? It's unjust to say the wrong things. And also you have, you shall know the truth shall set you free. Okay, what else? What else besides truth? Okay.
The need for humility and grace.
Humility, right? Which first then say, I may not be always wrong. Sorry, I meant always right, sorry. Freudian slip. What else? Humility, very important. What else? Grace. Okay, so show grace, a benefit of doubt to other people. Okay. Attitude. Can you tell me? Gratitude. Can you unpack that a little bit? What do you mean? Okay. 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 And that's part of the expression of humility. Very thankful that what I've had, that we have a tradition to do. I'm not smarter than my forefathers, but I should engage with them, right? Some people behave as though the last 1900 years of the church is irrelevant, but that's a bit proud, right? So gratitude, humility is important. How about the folks at the back?
I think restoration.
Restoration, tell us more. What do you mean by that?
I think we are called to restore all things back to the Lord. Not everything in the culture out there, but it's just how can we implement it in the work of grace, in the theology of restoration, so that we can really bring things to glorify God, the Lord.
So we are called to reconcile the world, uphold the truth, but recognize the heavens declare the glory of God means that there are some aspects of the world that's doing right. They cannot just be just negative people going there and say you are wrong. Then everybody hate you, right? And you wonder why. So that's important. Anything else? Well, final bits over here. From who?
In Romans, it says, those people who cause divisions and obstacles that are contrary to what has been taught.
Okay.
Paul says, keep away from them.
Okay.
And do not be deceived by their flattery of their thought. So be wise about what is good, innocent about what is evil. So I think the processes then is also like, when we receive fake news and all this kind of thing, that we do not forward.
Okay.
We to other people in case we become advocates.
So do fact checking also lah. If you really want to forward.
And then the more difficult thing is to go back to the person who sent you and
Okay.
I think that's got to do with the reconciliation part. Yeah. And then the practice is probably to unfold. But don't keep having this peace continue.
Ah.
Like, so keep away.
Okay. So she basically went drilled down from theology to processes to practices. That is a very good example. I can think of another one. For example, you must love your neighbor as yourself. Meaning you must be able to respect the neighbor and be truth about and just to your neighbor. Meaning, if your neighbor says something, you must represent your neighbor correctly. You cannot misrepresent your neighbor. And if your neighbor is made in the image of God, he cannot be always wrong, right? Maybe there are some, but in truth, the matter, they cannot be always wrong. Which means that sometimes they are right, and you want to affirm that there's something right about the person. Now, this is a good principle as a framework to apply, therefore, to news. Have you ever wondered, nowadays, in news, right, there are some news that when they criticize certain countries are always bad one. No, you cannot hear a single thing that is good. And anything goes wrong, it's that country's fault, no? Now, when news report until like that, right, it's not neutral. It cannot be there's nothing good out of the country. So that is my assessment now. If this news have nothing good to say about a particular country, this news is in serious trouble. They are not news, so they are ideological machines, right? And unfortunately, a lot of global north news are like that. So now I end up listening to Al Jazeera, DW. I cannot touch anything that's English, that's from the Anglo world anymore. But it's very, very hard, as you said. Listen to Chinese news, also cannot, right? Listen to CNN, also you listen to ideology. It's PBS may be better. So news listening is now becoming a very complex thing. That's why when I teach church history, I always remind them, you're not here to learn how to read church history. You're learning skills to read the modern day news because you're always discerning between the information. But that's a very important point. Your enemy, the person you hate, is not always wrong. If you see the person as an image of God, the theology, you must respect and listen and represent the person correctly to the extent the person will say, yeah, I hear you, you have represented me correctly. Okay? Very difficult to do. Okay, so theology, processes, practices. Hopefully there's one framework you can bring back. Now, I was also told to say that what are the things that you can pray for us. So let me just move on to, actually I had another things. No, this one, homework, go back. What does grace got to do with performance appraisal? Okay, think about that. Okay, let's take a look a bit more now. Okay, can So I think this is the first time I think we have reached a watershed in BGST where we really want to push forward and reinvent ourselves. No longer just a seminary, but really a school that is a college that's a blessing to the churches, to become your training arm, to do what you like to do, but must do it in scale, so it's better off that somebody else do that. So pray for the development of this Christian equipping education arm that we will partner with churches. Pray for the leadership training arm, which is new to some extent to us because we are for the first time trying to really merge between the best in executive training and the best in theology. And Center for Spiritual Formation. Pray that we will have partners because what we don't want to do is to develop a course, come to churches, use it. No, that's usually don't work. What we want to do is to work with churches and say where are pain points. So to use industrial terms, is design thinking that's kicking in. What's your user experience? Where will you use such content, right? There are a lot of people, there are pastors who tell me that, no, we like BGSD, but I don't know how to use your courses. Your spec so high in postgraduate level. So when we come down and work with you, what are your constraints? How much attention span you have? If you really want only content to listen on your 30 minutes NRP, right? Then that's the window we have to work with. You see, so we want to work with churches to spec out all this so that what we create is actually usable. If I come up with a 5-hour program nobody uses, it's a waste of everybody's time and money. Okay, church partnership is therefore very important. But I'll also be upfront that money is important. So pray for us. I've never raised so much money before. The target is 10 million. Why? We need to firstly build a hybrid center, BGSC Nexus, where we want that to be a space where the digital media studio is going to be, the spiritual formation rooms are going to be, a space for leadership training, hybrid learning, and so on. We're in the midst of really cutting down our physical library to curate the best works so that then the library is going to be on mobile app for you to just check in and out, and the digital resources will be made available for subscription. So we want to create a space. We are currently in an industrial building that's quite ulu. Nobody comes in the evenings. That doesn't work. We're trying to move closer to the MRT place, more centralized, so that people will actually come. You can work there. You can dialogue with our faculty there, so that it will be a learning community there. So the dream is to raise about 5 million to do that. Nowadays, buy a car is already $150,000 for the piece of paper, right? So 5 million is to really buy a space. So part of the project is to cut down our physical library so that we need less space. So it will be 3,000, 3,005 to bring everything together. So it's a very nice learning community. You can go there to work, drink coffee with us, and so on. Okay, and we need a new team for each center, a leadership team to curate the leadership, bring together different experts in the church to teach. And each team is going to cost us $1 million now. What does that look like? I've already mentioned about spiritual mentoring space. So our classroom that used in the evenings and daytime become co-working space. The marketplace professionals can come, can worship together while you work together. Okay. The second one, and so to support that, well, we pray for us. We're going to go to some high net worth donors to ask for support. But you can also support by legacy giving, giving 1% of your will to us, to that. Or one-time recurring giving. Just reach out to me if you are interested. The other way is to partner us with our platform. Pray for partners, church partners to join us. We're looking about 5 church partners to come on board to just test drive with their church. Help us to build the digital instruction team, media person, content person, graphic person, and then centers for leadership and spiritual formation. We estimate this will need another $1 million a year going forward just for operating costs. Yeah, pray for us in all this. And of course, as a benefit to churches and individuals, we do give benefits to you all. But really, we seek your prayers because it's a dream that is beyond what I can imagine for now, but I think it's important because we are in the situation for the church now where we really need to help pivot so that churches can flourish, so that churches can really effectively disciple everyone who is sitting here. Marketplace, disciples, and leaders, you are out there to represent Christ so that people will be drawn to the churches. So with that, I bring my messaging to a close. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask me at this point. Yeah. Any questions? If not, you can speak to me later here also. Okay. I hand the time back to Eng Chow. Yep.